Outside of WordPress, it's normally bigger organizations that are using the tools, mostly just because of the cost. Like normally it'd be, tens of thousands a year for things that can do similar functions. In WordPress e-learning, it is a lot of solo course creators, small companies, and they just didn't have access to those kinds of tools. Being able to offer them these smaller focused products because they're more justifiable with lower development cost is kind of exciting. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily a traditional audience, but now that we can offer these kinds of tools that are specialized and add more value, then the smaller creators can do a lot more with WordPress than they could in the past.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Agency Success Community at hosting.com. I'm here with a friend of mine, Ryan Moore, who's got a very distinguished background in WordPress and products and things like that. And I'm excited to talk with Ryan about AI. And this series of what we're doing here is just talking about how people are using it on the cutting edge. And I've known Ryan for a long time. I know his work is really good, particularly in the membership site area in WordPress, on the web, and has sold and worked with clients and agencies for years. So Ryan, without further ado, would you introduce yourself and tell us what you're doing now?
Yeah, thanks, Cory. So just as a bit of background, I started in WordPress in 2013. A partner and I co-founded Uncanny Owl. And just over a decade, we grew that into mostly developing plugin products in the e-learning space and automation. So a lot of LearnDash add-ons and then Uncanny Automator. Did really well with that, had a great team. And then in 2024, I left that company to take a break from WordPress for a little while. And after about 10 months, got back into it and started PressPrimer. And PressPrimer right now is a company that's focused on assessment in WordPress education. So specifically looking at things like quizzes and assignments. So I got into that because I had been working in e-learning for it's been about 25 years now. And just during my time doing agency work and also other WordPress work, just seeing where some of the gaps were and what couldn't be accommodated at the time with existing plugins or even that we could build just because the expense would have been too high. So PressPrimer is just about me kind of starting my own thing, doing what I want, and kind of having the flexibility to grow with assessment in WordPress.
That's awesome. I forgot a part of Uncanny Owl that you all did agency work. So you've been an agency owner, you've done agency work too, which is our audience here.
Yeah, we did consulting work from about 2013 until 2022. It was all e-learning. So building e-learning sites for people, building e-learning courses, building custom solutions in the e-learning space. And then we got into automation with Automator in 2020.
Okay, before we dive into the AI, I want to talk about the membership space, the e-learning space, as you call it, or it's called, I should say. And, I know during COVID, there was a big jump because people could come home, they could work on their side projects, finally do their membership site, finally do their e-learning or their course and things like that. But today in 2026, what are you seeing with e-learning? What are some of the trends you're noticing into 2026 here?
Yeah, so COVID changed a lot. Like at Uncanny Owl, our e-learning business doubled basically overnight. It was very self-directed in the WordPress space. And it's been about 6 years, I guess, since it kind of exploded. And it has started to taper off a bit, just in terms of like there are a lot of mature plugins. There are some big platforms in the space like LearnDash and Tutor LMS, LearnPress, Lifter, Sensei, and some others. But they haven't really changed a lot in the last couple of years. So outside of WordPress, I'm seeing more in personalized learning, leveraging AI, but in WordPress, it hasn't changed too much in its core. So there's a lot of smaller players that are doing interesting things, but bigger plugins are I think they're pretty mature and they haven't evolved as much. And I find that too, like even when I was at Uncanny and we were planning things and running things, it's hard when you've got a mature product to really step back and take time to innovate and do different things when things are working well and you've got a big customer base and you're already really busy. So yeah, we're seeing the change, I think, more to personalized learning and increased AI use, just in terms of how do we tailor learning around the user and making it more useful to them.
So when you say personalized, I think you kind of started to get into that, but how does that look with some of your customers and clients? How are they personalizing courses or membership sites and things like that?
Yeah, so I think you're looking at their behavior as they're learning, what they're retaining, what they're not, how they're going through a program, and then how you can adjust it kind of at the time, so on the fly, just so that it's based more on where they're having knowledge gaps, what they need at that time, and tools to help them retain it better. So instead of one size fits all, how can you make it so this is more beneficial to the person who's actually doing it and how they apply that?
And then the use of AI, what are those things you see with AI in those learning and e-learning environments?
So in WordPress, still, it's not a lot, like branching in quizzes, so that based on like your performance here or how you answer this, then it changes like what comes next, or like how you've done in a quiz or assessment changes the learning path, so what you tackle next. Or if you do something well and demonstrate mastery of something, then you don't have to do something else. Those kinds of things.
Real responsive, adapting learning at the edge of what people are actually, progressing and things like that.
Mhm.
That's pretty exciting. I think one thing about learning is, we all learn a little bit different. We some people, like, for instance, I wear hearing aids, and so early on, I prefer reading. I can go faster and all that, and that was one example. Like, but then there's a whole set of people that love audiobooks. That's how they read, and I go, that's legitimate way to learn and read for you. And we should do that in e-learning. And I love that AI is even a topic in this, because we can get closer to how someone uniquely needs to learn.
Yeah, I'll give you an example too. Like one thing that I built into the quiz platform was something called spaced repetition, which basically means that you feed somebody information and test them on something when they're most likely to forget it, just to try to help them retain more. So basically, I set up a system where you feed a question pool into a quiz, and a user goes through it, and either they get things right or they get them wrong. And the system effectively remembers what they've done right, what they've done wrong, what topic areas they've struggled with. It's able to help in that capacity, just to retain more of the information that you're learning. And my wife was able to use that. She was taking a university course recently, and I fed in a bunch of questions for her. And she went in on a daily basis and took whatever it suggested, just to help her retain the things she struggled with, so that she could perform better in the course.
I love that. Okay, well, so now let's talk about some of the ways you're using AI in your work at PressPrimer, and we'll get to some of the ways you see opportunities for the next phases. But let's talk about that work you're doing now with AI and how you're utilizing it.
Sure. So I'm really using AI in two different ways, both in development of the company and the products, as well as inside the products to help educators. So on the company side, like right now, it's just me really at PressPrimer. So there's a lot that I can't do, but I kind of know how to do. So I do use AI assistance with development to cut costs and also reduce development time, as well as things like the website, because I'm not good at that kind of thing. So I can provide feedback, and it helps kind of coach me through building the site out, and other things that I need done around that. Inside the product, I'm using a number of AI tools for educators. So examples would be things like rubric-based AI-assisted grading. So basically, when you have an assignment that a student uploads, then the instructor can define, like, basically here's the breakdown of how it would be scored, and then within that you'd have performance levels. So the instructor can define them, like, here's what represents a 10, here's an 8, here's what a score of 6 means. And so the AI then is able to look at the assignment because I can kind of extract the text from PDF, Word files, text, images, whatever, and pass them to an AI, and it can provide feedback, and based on the rubrics and performance levels, it can provide suggestions on things the instructor can suggest as feedback. So that's one. Things like proofreading, question generation, feedback generation for quizzes, distractor generation based on the context of the course and any other inputs. So things like that, just to help instructors, but not replace them either. Just make the work more efficient and give them suggestions that they can either action or ignore. So it's kind of in a couple areas.
Almost like having a grad assistant.
Yeah, and everything, like all the feedback is always just a draft with the instructor having kind of the final say. There are things too that we do like plagiarism detection, AI content detection, and then those go through an AI. And again, they're just suggestions and feedback to the instructor, not necessarily going straight to the student saying you cheated. So they're just inputs that the instructor can use to kind of form their opinion and provide feedback in a grade.
I think wiring that in to be that grad assistant to make the teacher, the professor's job more easy to focus on the core thing, which is helping impart knowledge and wisdom, is pretty key.
Yeah, for sure.
What are, you've done some agency work. Obviously, you've owned an agency in the past, and I know that's not what you're doing today. But what are some ways you could see, we're playing in dreamland here for a second, but you've got the real experience looking back on your, years of experience running an agency, running clients, dealing with all that. What are some things if you were to do that again today, that you would embed into an agency, into your agency, for instance?
I mean, everything that I'm looking at is based on the 10 years when I was running Uncanny Owl with Ken, and ideas we had there, feedback we had from users, projects that just never went anywhere, and also gaps that I saw. So it's helping solve problems that just wouldn't have been possible to solve before, either because of budget or technical limitations or some other reason. So I think like now having tools that allow development and also just solving problems at lower cost and more efficiently make a lot of opportunities for agencies that didn't exist before. So products like what I'm creating, even simpler versions you could create in a month or two with AI that might have taken like 6 months before. So you can take on some of the projects that would have been just not economically feasible. You can do them now, whereas you couldn't before. So it helps in that capacity. I think the main thing is just that it amplifies a lot of the skills and knowledge that people at an agency have. So being able to work through projects more quickly and add more value to users at potentially a lower price is the main benefit.
Well, you touched on two things you're using now, which is to help think about run the business of PressPrimer. I want to talk about that for sure. What are some ways you approach your use of AI with your business now? And then second, we'll talk about the website, because I'm with you there. So many people, it's like, I'm not a designer, for instance, or I don't do this, and I have done a couple of things for myself to build a WordPress site with AI, but I'm curious about that. But let's start first with your business and how you're using it to run PressPrimer.
Yeah, so on the business side, there are a lot of ways that I'm using it right now. Planning is a basic one, like looking at what my goals are and kind of helping talk through with an AI, kind of what are the steps to get to that point, what needs to happen, and doing that brainstorming. On the website side, like if I just have a template, it's not going to look good. I'm not going to know what I'm doing. So I can kind of handle the content, but design suggestions are always ideal. And then it can do things and I can provide feedback and we can iterate and just have that conversation until it gets to a point where it's actually something usable. Things just to make sure that I'm not introducing knowledge gaps into the work. Like if I'm building out knowledge bases, then I can write content based on features I'm adding and just give it a second pass, like take a look at the code, take a look at the the scoping documents, is there anything I'm missing that might be useful to users? So having kind of that second eye on things is always useful. Change logs too. It's going through the commits for me in Git and kind of compiling those, and then I review things, and it's giving me suggestions that I can then review, and we can have a discussion, and it can implement things for me. So things like that, just where maybe I struggle a bit too, or I don't have enough time or the skills, then I can do as much as I can and kind of fill in those gaps. And again, it helps just to have the background where I was at an agency for a long time, just to understand kind of what's required, what's best practice, so that I can kind of coach it to a point where I get results that I'm happy with.
Let's talk about the website stuff and how you're using, particularly to keep the PressPrimer website up and going. What are you doing, and what are you seeing as you're working with AI for your WordPress website?
So just on the site side itself, basically I built a plugin that handles all the code, basically like a child theme, I guess, think of it that way. And it has all the things in it that I would have had a developer work on for me. So it's a kind of a self-contained plugin that we kind of iterate over. So I started off just with a builder and trying to make things myself and using templates, and it just went nowhere and took me forever. So now everything's like I'm just using short codes and consistent styles and patterns so that I can build new pages and content more quickly that are consistent. And then anytime there's a change, then it's just a change in the plugin that I can quickly make and then push it, and the changes are there for me. So it's kind of that, like it takes all the design consideration and the time, just like testing on different platforms, and like I don't understand, how to match colors and how to organize things. So it takes care of all that. So basically like all the pages are just text now with short codes, but it ends up rendering something that looks okay, I think, which I couldn't have done on my own without some kind of front-end designer and then some kind of developer to build it all for me.
That's fantastic. Same. It's kind of multiplying where you can do more without having to have a team, hire a team on there. And some of the series I've talked to Russell Aaron and others about how they're using agentic AI. Have you done anything with agentic AI?
I'd say no, not really in that space. And I tend to handhold the AI pretty closely too in terms of everything I'm doing. So it's always a conversation and incremental change for what I'm using it for.
Well, thanks, Ryan, for all of this. What's new and upcoming and exciting that you're working on next?
So, I mean, the focus is always for me right now on WordPress assessment and what we can do with that, both for educators and for students. So the next exciting thing for me, I think, is putting more control in the hands of students. So, for example, like a tool where students can say, here's something I'm preparing for. I want you to give me like 50 questions from these topic areas every day for the next week at these difficulty levels. And then each day, like focus on my weak areas to improve my performance so that by the end of the week, I have a pretty solid command of the knowledge that's required. So things like that, where students have control and they can kind of push themselves, I think is pretty exciting.
And that kind of feedback, I think, for a teacher in a classroom setting, I think is pretty incredible in enabling those tools for students to actually take learning into a little bit more of their control.
Yeah, the assignment side, like I started with quiz platform, and then after it was pretty mature, a couple months ago, I started on the assignment work, which was interesting, and I'm kind of more excited about that because nobody's doing anything with assignments in WordPress really. So things like essays, short answer questions, just things where people are writing, where it requires kind of some kind of review. So in other LMSs, it's kind of an ignored topic. And when I worked in the space for 12 years, nobody was doing anything with assignments. They weren't even using them because they were so awkward. Like you'd have to have a student upload a file, then the teacher would have to download it, then they'd have to open it, assuming they have an application compatible with whatever the file is. Then they'd have to add comments, return it to the students by upload again, organize the files, and then add some comments. Whereas what I've been able to do with AI assistants is take some of those uploads and keep everything inside WordPress. So the instructor can see a rendered version of the PDF file, the Word, whatever it is. I've got support for inline annotation, so they don't have to download. They can just like write, add comments right inside the assignment. They can get feedback on the grading. They can go through the rubric performance levels and grade it right there. So everything happens in the browser, and it's just so much more efficient, and it makes assignments a usable tool that educators can include in e-learning courses that otherwise you just wouldn't use because it's too much burden on the instructor. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible, and I think that's pretty interesting in WordPress right now.
So I know teachers, professors, educational organizations, of course, they need assessments, they need assignment, they need everything we're talking about. But I know there's also a big market out there too, and potential for some other organizations to leverage assessment, e-learning, particularly, at hosting.com, we have our own internal learning, opportunities, elements is probably in that space that we offer for our team on leadership, management, and different things like that. But
Yeah.
what other, businesses and organizations could really take advantage of assessments and e-learning?
Yeah, so like what I'm doing right now, some of the features are available in SaaS products and enterprise products. Outside of WordPress, it's normally bigger organizations that are using the tools, mostly just because of the cost. Like normally it'd be, tens of thousands a year for things that can do similar functions. So like in WordPress e-learning, it is a lot of solo course creators, small companies, and they just didn't have access to those kinds of tools. So I think being able to offer them these smaller focused products because they're more justifiable with lower development cost is kind of exciting. So I wouldn't say there's necessarily a traditional audience, but now that we can offer these kinds of tools that are specialized and add more value, then the smaller creators can do a lot more with WordPress than they could in the past.
Like, for instance, we have a customer here at hosting.com that does addiction recovery work and has an assessment on his website for helping people understand, if I cross this threshold, am I, consumed with addiction, for instance. Think of that as a case, for sure.
It's interesting, like a lot of my early customers and a lot of people at Uncanny Owl too were in medical space. So there tends to be a lot more expectation around what features are available for assessment in that field than necessarily other ones. So yeah, just like in medical healthcare, things like that, it's like there's a lot of focus on assessment and making sure that people are able to acquire the knowledge and retain it and apply it in kind of their job functions or even individuals that are just working in the space.
Well, Ryan Moore of PressPrimer.com. Go check out what Ryan's doing. His work is really awesome and in depth. I've worked with him in the past, and everything he touches is quality and good, and he's been in the space for a long time. So if you need something, head over to PressPrimer.com. And Ryan, thanks for just sharing kind of a little bit of what you're doing today and how you're using AI in that. For other people's benefit, to ideas and inspiration for how to either run their business and agency to using it in their daily work. So thank you for joining us on Agency Success today.
Thanks, Cory. I appreciate you having me on.